The shadow of the mask. Why some souls fear their own light. There's a certain kind of silence that lives behind the eyes of people who are always hiding something. Not secrets in the usual sense, not lies or betrayals, but something much deeper. They're hiding themselves, their real self. And what if I told you that Carl Jung, the great depth psychologist and spiritual pioneer, not only saw this, he mapped it? What if I told you there are patterns, specific types of people who consistently hide their true nature, not because they are evil, but because they are afraid of what would happen if they were ever fully seen? You've met these people. You might even be one of them. I've been one too, Jung said. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. So ask yourself, have you ever felt like you've been playing a role so well that even you forgot it was a mask? And why is that? Why do the most complex, intelligent, and sensitive people often hide the most? The truth is, it's not because they are weak. It's because they are powerful in a way the world has never taught them how to handle. Jung believed that we each carry within us a secret self, a part we repress, deny, or bury. He called this the shadow. And it's not just the dark things we hide, our anger, pride, envy. The shadow also contains our greatness, our genius, our sacred fire. But because we're conditioned to fear both failure and brilliance, we push it all down. And this is where the 6 types of people Jung described begin to emerge. They live in the world, but they are never really seen. They are half awake, half hiding. And when you learn how to recognize them, you begin to recognize the parts of yourself that you've abandoned. The first person is the overachiever with a secret void. They are always performing, always doing more, always pushing. From the outside, they seem unstoppable, driven, successful. But what they don't show you is why they're doing it. Deep down, they don't believe they're enough without the performance. They built their identity on achievement because they're terrified of what they'd find if they ever stopped. Jung would say they are possessed by the persona, the false self we create to survive the expectations of others. This person is hiding not because they're fake, but because they've forgotten who they are without the applause. So I ask you, are you driven by inspiration or by the fear of being invisible if you stop achieving? The second person is the peacemaker who's secretly angry. They say yes to everything. They're always calm, always smiling, always smoothing things over. They hate conflict. They want peace. But under the surface, rage. Not explosive rage, repressed, silent, dangerous rage. Because they've spent their whole life swallowing their truth to keep others happy. They've confused love with approval and harmony with self-betrayal. Jung would say their shadow is full of fire they've never allowed themselves to feel. And the longer it stays buried, the more it leaks out as resentment, exhaustion, or illness. This person doesn't even know they're angry, but their soul does. So here's the question. Where are you pretending to be peaceful just to avoid being powerful? The third person is the comedian who can't be serious. They're funny, witty, always making others laugh, but they never let anyone close. Humor is their shield. They use it like armor. Because if they ever got serious, if they ever let themselves feel, they'd collapse. They're hiding their grief, their deep, ancient sadness. Maybe it's ancestral. Maybe it's from childhood, but they've learned to entertain instead of reveal. Jung would say they are trapped in a compensatory mask, one that covers their deepest wounds with charm. But the price is intimacy. The price is connection, because no one can love the real you if you never show it. So ask yourself, when was the last time you let someone see your sadness without trying to make them comfortable? The fourth person is the helper who's dying inside. They're the one always taking care of everyone else. The emotional first responder, the fixer, the healer. But they're not okay. They're exhausted. And they don't tell anyone because their worth is tied to their usefulness. They believe that if they stop helping, they'll stop mattering. Jung called this the wounded archetype of the caregiver, someone who gives not from fullness, but from fear. Their shadow is full of unmet needs, suppressed boundaries, and unspoken pain. And the irony? They teach others how to heal, but they've abandoned their own medicine. So I'll ask you this directly. Are you taking care of everyone else just to avoid the emptiness of not knowing how to care for yourself? The fifth person is the intellectual who fears feeling. This one is brilliant, analytical, rational. They can explain everything, but they feel almost nothing. They live in their mind because the body is too chaotic. Emotions are messy. Vulnerability is terrifying. So they intellectualize everything, especially their own pain. But Jung taught that the soul doesn't reveal itself through logic. It reveals itself through feeling, through dreams, through symbols. And if you live only in the head, you cut yourself off from the very source of your transformation. This person hides not just their emotions, they hide their humanity. So let me ask you, is your intelligence protecting you from wisdom that only your heart can access? The sixth person is the spiritual seeker who's escaping reality. They meditate, they chant, they read sacred texts, they speak in poetic language. But if you really look, they're floating, they're not grounded. They're using spirituality to bypass their pain. Jung warned about this. He called it spiritual inflation, when the ego uses the language of enlightenment to avoid the work of embodiment. This person is addicted to light because they're terrified of their own shadow. But true spirituality isn't escape, it's integration. It's bringing the light into the dark. And the more you avoid your humanity, the more you distort your divinity. So I ask you, are you using your spiritual path to rise or to run? These six people, all of them, are not broken. They're not bad. They're not weak. They are us. They are the parts of ourselves that haven't yet learned how to feel safe being seen. And every time we judge them, we judge ourselves. Every time we deny them, we reinforce the very illusion that Jung devoted his life to breaking. The illusion that we must hide our true nature to be loved, accepted, or safe. But here's the truth. The parts of you that you hide are often the parts that hold your power. Your anger might be sacred. Your sadness might be the key to compassion. Your fear might be pointing to your purpose. But until you face them, they will control you from the shadows. So now I want you to sit with this, not passively, but like a mirror being held up to your soul. Which one of these masks are you still wearing? And more importantly, who would you be without it? Why your shadow is the key to your spiritual power. The greatest irony of the human soul is that what we run from the most is often the very thing that holds our liberation. We fear our darkness, our shadow, our raw emotions, yet that's where our power lies. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He didn't see the shadow as something to be destroyed. He saw it as something to be integrated. And here's what that really means. The parts of you that you've been hiding, repressing, denying, they don't make you broken. They make you whole, but only if you have the courage to meet them. The overachiever, the peacemaker, the comedian, the helper, the intellectual, the spiritual escapist. Each of these personas is a mask crafted to survive in a world that punishes authenticity. But beneath each mask is a gift so sacred it could change your entire destiny if only you dared to own it. Let's go deeper. The overachiever, for example, is often driven by a hidden genius, a deep sense of mission. They may have forgotten it under the pressure of validation and performance, but buried beneath the anxiety is a sacred clarity. They were meant to build, to lead, to create. But they can't access it until they stop chasing external rewards and start asking, what am I building that actually serves my soul? The shadow here is not laziness, it's stillness. The fear of what might rise in the absence of motion. But stillness is the womb of vision. And when the overachiever learns to rest, to listen, to pause, their output becomes not just impressive, but divine. The peacemaker, so afraid of conflict, often carries an incredible inner warrior, someone who sees injustice clearly, someone who knows how to mediate, to unify, to restore balance. But they've confused peace with silence. And as long as they avoid their anger, they'll never access their true leadership. Jung would say their repressed rage isn't evil, it's unclaimed power. And when they finally allow themselves to feel it, not to lash out, but to integrate, they become unstoppable. Because now they're not just avoiding harm, they're becoming a force for healing. Their shadow turns into strength. Their quiet becomes a roar of wisdom that others can finally hear. The comedian hides behind laughter, but their hidden gift is emotional depth. They feel the world more than most. Their sadness isn't a flaw, it's a portal, a way into the collective heart. But society doesn't give us permission to cry in public, to grieve without shame. So they mask it with humor. But when they finally stop performing and start feeling, their words carry weight. Their presence becomes healing. They stop being the one who distracts and may become the one who awakens. Because laughter rooted in truth doesn't just entertain, it transforms. And the greatest comedians are often the deepest philosophers in disguise. The helper may seem like they exist for others, but their real path is about learning self-love. Underneath their compulsion to give is a sacred longing to receive, to be held, to be seen, to be worthy without doing anything at all. And when they begin to meet their own needs, something miraculous happens. Their service becomes pure, no longer transactional, no longer tied to identity. They give not to prove anything, but because love naturally overflows from a full cup. Jung would say this is the transition from the wounded caregiver to the conscious healer. And it doesn't come from giving more. It comes from finally realizing you are worthy even when you do nothing. So let me ask you something that most people are afraid to confront. What have you been giving to others that you secretly wish someone would give to you? That question is not to shame you, it's to free you. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, you stop expecting others to rescue you. And that's when your shadow stops being a prison and starts becoming a teacher. There comes a point in every spiritual journey when the mask no longer fits. You feel it slipping, cracking, the smile feels forced, the habits feel hollow. The persona you've worn for so long starts to itch like a second skin that's grown too tight. And that's not failure, it's evolution. Carl Jung didn't just teach us how to identify the masks. He gave us a map for transcending them. And if you've made it this far, you're already standing at the threshold of something rare and holy, the moment when the false self begins to collapse and the soul finally has space to rise. Let's return to the last two personas, the intellectual and the spiritual escapist. These two are the trickiest because they can hide in plain sight. The intellectual uses knowledge as a fortress. They feel safe in concepts, theories, systems. But their heart, guarded. Their body, neglected. Their inner child, starving. When they finally drop the armor of intellect and allow themselves to feel, something extraordinary happens. Their intelligence doesn't weaken, it deepens. It becomes embodied, no longer cold, detached, or purely analytical. Their wisdom becomes alive. They don't just understand life, they start to relate to it. And in doing so, they unlock a kind of knowing that no book can teach, the wisdom of direct experience. And the spiritual seeker. Their mask is perhaps the most seductive, because everything they say sounds enlightened. They speak of love, unity, transcendence, but often, they're floating above their wounds rather than walking through them. Jung warned about this subtle bypassing, what he called inflation of the ego through identification with the self. Simply put, it means using the language of the divine to avoid the pain of being human. But the real mystics, the awakened ones, they don't escape the world. They return to it more grounded, more present, more real. They cry, they bleed, They laugh, they rage, but they do it consciously. They don't hide their shadow, they dance with it. That's the final integration. When your spirituality stops being a costume and becomes your skin. So how do we break the mask? Not by force, not by shame, but by radical honesty. By asking the one question most people avoid their entire lives: who am I when no one is watching? Not who you pretend to be, not who you think you should be, but who you are when the performance ends. That's the beginning of freedom. That's when the soul starts whispering again, and at first it's terrifying, because when the mask falls, your ego panics. You'll want to pick it back up. You'll want to say, no, I'm fine. I'm just tired. I'm just stressed. But that's not truth. That's survival. And you weren't born to survive. You were born to remember the part of you that existed before the world taught you to hide. The part that cried freely, loved openly, spoke passionately, and didn't apologize for existing. That version of you is not lost. It's buried beneath the roles, beneath the pain, beneath the armor. But Jung was clear. What you repress doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits in dreams, in triggers, in patterns. And it will keep whispering, keep knocking, keep showing up in life and love and work until you finally turn inward and say, I see you. I'm ready. Let's come home. So here's the final question I leave you with. One that can't be answered with words, only with living. What would your life look like if you stopped hiding? What kind of relationships would you have? What kind of art would you make? What kind of peace would you feel if you no longer had to manage an image but simply be? That's the invitation. That's the revolution. And that's why Jung's work isn't just psychology, it's spiritual liberation. Because when you stop running from your shadow, you don't just meet yourself. You meet the divine.